Have you ever heard of a war that completely reshaped the destinies of three major East Asian nations? A conflict so vast it involved hundreds of thousands of soldiers, groundbreaking naval technology, and legendary heroes whose names still echo through history today? We're talking about the Japanese invasions of Korea, a 7-year struggle from 1592 to 1598 that is often overlooked in Western history books, but was absolutely monumental. This isn't just a story of battles and strategies. It's a saga of ambition, resistance, and the incredible resilience of a nation fighting for its very survival. So grab your seat, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most dramatic and impactful conflicts of the 16th century. It all starts with one man, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. After decades of brutal civil war, Hideyoshi had finally unified Japan under his rule. He was a man of immense ambition, rising from a humble background to become the most powerful figure in the country. But unifying Japan wasn't enough. He dreamed bigger. He envisioned a vast empire, starting with the conquest of Ming Dynasty China. And to get to China, he had to go through one place, Korea. In 1591, Hideyoshi sent a bold, almost arrogant demand to Korea's Joseon dynasty. He essentially said, "I'm invading China, and you're going to be my highway. Either join me or be crushed." The Korean court, led by King Seonjo, was in a tough spot. They were a tributary state of Ming China and had enjoyed centuries of relative peace. They couldn't possibly betray their powerful ally. They politely but firmly refused Hideyoshi's demand. They hoped diplomacy would prevail, but they underestimated the scale of Hideyoshi's ambition. While the Korean government debated, Japan was assembling one of the largest and most battle-hardened armies the world had ever seen. We're talking about an initial invasion force of over 158,000 samurai, armed with the revolutionary arquebus, a type of matchlock rifle introduced by the Portuguese. These soldiers weren't just numerous. They were veterans of Japan's own Sengoku period, the Warring States era. They were disciplined, ruthless, and experts in the art of war. In April 1592, the invasion began. The Japanese armada landed near Bizen, on the southeastern coast of Korea. The local Korean defenses, accustomed to smaller-scale pirate raids, were utterly overwhelmed. The Japanese forces, led by generals like Konishi Yukinaga, were a well-oiled military machine. They captured Bizen in a matter of hours. From there, they split into several divisions and marched north, crushing everything in their path. The Korean army, poorly equipped and lacking recent combat experience, crumbled. The speed of the Japanese advance was terrifying. It took them only 20 days to march from Bizen and capture the capital city, Henseong, which is modern-day Seoul. King Seonjo and his court were forced to flee north, desperately sending pleas for help to their Ming allies in China. It looked like Korea was on the brink of complete collapse. The Japanese seemed unstoppable on land. But the war was about to take a dramatic turn, and it would happen at sea. While the Japanese army dominated the land, their navy had a critical weakness. Its primary role was transport, not combat. Their ships were essentially floating cargo holds, designed to ferry troops and supplies across the strait. This is where one of history's greatest naval heroes enters the story, Admiral Yi Sun-sin. Yi Sun-sin was a brilliant, strategic, and utterly incorruptible naval commander. He knew he couldn't fight the Japanese head-on with their superior numbers. He had to be smarter. He also had a secret weapon, the Geobaxian or turtle ship. This wasn't just a ship, it was a floating fortress. It was covered with iron plates, making it resistant to enemy fire. Spikes on its roof prevented enemies from boarding. It had cannons firing from all directions, and at its front was a dragon cess that could spew cannon fire or clouds of blinding smoke. It was a weapon of psychological terror and incredible naval power. Yi Sun-sin used his tactical genius and his turtle ships to devastating effect. He employed a strategy of luring Japanese fleets into narrow channels where their numbers were a disadvantage. In a series of stunning victories, like the Battle of Okpo and the Battle of Hansen Island, his small fleet systematically destroyed the Japanese supply lines. Think about it. The massive Japanese army in Korea was like a giant with its lifeline being slowly choked off. Without a constant flow of food, ammunition, and reinforcements from Japan, their land campaign couldn't be sustained. Admiral Yi's victories at sea were the turning point that saved Korea from immediate conquest. Meanwhile, King Sino's pleas for help had finally been answered. The only emperor of Ming China, realizing that a Japanese-controlled Korea would be a direct threat to his own borders, decided to intervene. In early 1593, a large Ming army crossed the Yalu River into Korea. Now, the conflict became a three-way war. The combined Korean and Ming forces managed to retake Pyongyang, and they began to push the Japanese southward. The Japanese, hampered by their broken supply lines and facing a two-front war, were forced to retreat to a network of fortifications along Korea's southern coast. Exhausted, the three sides entered into peace negotiations. These negotiations dragged on for years. They were a complex mess of diplomacy, deception, and cultural misunderstandings. Hideyoshi, back in Japan, felt he had been victorious and expected the Ming emperor to submit. The Ming, on the other hand, saw themselves as the saviors of Korea and expected Japan to apologize and become a tributary state. The talks were doomed from the start. Hideyoshi, feeling insulted and impatient, decided to end the stalemate. In 1597, he launched a second, equally massive invasion. This second invasion was even more brutal. Having learned from their previous mistakes, the Japanese aimed for total subjugation and were ordered to be merciless. The initial assault was once again overwhelming, but this time something had changed. The Korean and Ming armies were better prepared. They had learned to coordinate their efforts, and the Korean people had organized righteous armies, local militias of peasants, scholars, and monks who waged a fierce guerrilla war against the invaders, harassing their supply lines and bogging them down. But Korea suffered a self-inflicted blow. Admiral Yi Sun-sin, the hero of the seas, fell victim to court politics and jealousy. A rival's false report led to him being stripped of his command, imprisoned, and tortured. He was replaced by an admiral who, despite his bravery, lacked Yi's strategic brilliance. This new admiral, goaded by the court, led the entire Korean fleet into a Japanese trap at the Battle of Chilchiliang. The result was a catastrophe. The Korean navy was almost completely annihilated. Out of over 150 ships, only a dozen survived. With the Korean navy gone, the Japanese had a clear path to advance both by land and sea. It was Korea's darkest hour. In desperation, the government released Admiral Yi and reinstated him. He was given command of the pathetic remnants of his once mighty fleet, just 13 ships. Facing him was a Japanese armada of over 300 vessels. What happened next is the stuff of legend. At the Battle of Myeongyang, Yi Sun-sin chose a narrow strait with treacherous, swirling currents. Using his intimate knowledge of the tides and the terrain, he lured the massive Japanese fleet into the strait. With his 13 ships, he created a bottleneck and held off an enemy that outnumbered him more than 10-1. It was a victory so improbable it seemed miraculous, a testament to his unparalleled genius. He once again saved his nation from the brink of destruction. The war ground on, but the end was near, and it came unexpectedly. In 1598, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man whose ambition had started it all, died. His final wish was for his forces to be brought home from Korea. His successors, eager to consolidate their own power in Japan, immediately ordered a full withdrawal. The 7-year war was finally over. The Japanese attempted one last large-scale evacuation, but Admiral Yi was waiting. In the final naval clash, the Battle of Noryang, Yi Sun-sin sought to block their retreat and inflict maximum damage. He was successful, but during the ferocious battle, he was struck by a stray bullet. His famous last words were, "The battle is at its height. Do not announce my death." His nephew wore his armor and continued beating the war drum. And his forces fought on to a final decisive victory, not realizing their admiral had fallen. The aftermath of the Imjin War was profound. Korea was devastated. Farmland was destroyed. A huge portion of the population was lost, and cultural treasures were looted or burned. The nation was scarred for generations. For Japan, the failed invasion drained its resources and led to the fall of the Toyotomi clan, paving the way for Tokugawa Ieyasu to establish the Tokugawa shogunate, which would rule Japan for the next 250 years in an era of isolation. For Ming China, the massive cost of the war severely weakened its treasury and military, contributing to its eventual collapse and conquest by the Manchus a few decades later. The Japanese invasions of Korea were a cataclysmic event that redrew the map of power in East Asia. It's a story of colossal ambition, heroic resistance, and the tragic, interconnected fates of three great nations. It's a reminder of the incredible human cost of war, but also of the unyielding spirit of those who fight to defend their homes. Thanks for watching. If you found this chapter of history as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world.